Mercury in the second house. Words that build. Welcome to Mercury in the second house in Synastry. In this overlay, we explore what happens when one person's Mercury, their mind, their voice, their way of processing and articulating the world, falls into another person's second house, the house of material resources, values, self-worth, and the things one holds most dear. This overlay has a quality of groundedness that is not always associated with Mercury, a planet more commonly linked with quickness and movement. When Mercury lands in the second house in overlay, something slows slightly, in the best possible way. The Mercury person's mind becomes engaged with what the house person values, what they own, what gives them security, and how they speak, or do not speak, about money and worth. The Mercury person often finds themselves drawn into conversations about material matters, practical finances, deeply held values, and the things the house person has worked to build or to protect. This may feel surprising at first. Mercury is a communicative, curious planet, and the second house is earthy and material. But the combination produces something genuinely useful. The Mercury person helps the house person think more clearly and speak more articulately about what they truly value. They provide a kind of intellectual scaffolding around what the house person holds dear. The house person may find, in the Mercury person's company, that they become more conscious of their own financial patterns, their relationship to security, and the values that quietly govern their choices. Conversations that might otherwise be avoided, about money, about what is worth protecting, about the practical realities of building a life, happen more easily here. The Mercury person is not afraid of these topics. They engage with them directly, and that directness can be a genuine gift. There is also a practical dimension worth naming. The Mercury person may be genuinely helpful to the house person in matters of finances, planning, contracts, and the organization of material affairs. Their analytical mind applied to the house person's practical world can produce real, tangible results. This is one of the overlays that appears frequently in successful long-term partnerships, business or romantic, where shared resources and financial decisions are an ongoing reality. The Mercury person also tends to have opinions about how the house person earns, spends, and assigns value to things, and they are rarely shy about expressing those opinions. At their best, these observations are useful. The Mercury person can see patterns the house person has lived inside for so long that they can no longer perceive them clearly. One of the subtler effects of this overlay is on the house person's self-worth. The second house is not only about material resources, it is also about the value one places on oneself. The Mercury person's ongoing engagement with this territory means they are, whether consciously or not, regularly communicating messages about worth to the house person. When those messages are affirmative and thoughtful, this can be quietly transformative. To the challenges, the Mercury person may become overly opinionated about how the house person manages their money or resources. The house person's values, which are often deeply personal and not always arrived at through logic, may feel scrutinized or second-guessed. No one appreciates being told, however gently, that the things they care about are poorly reasoned or inefficiently managed. The house person may also find the Mercury person's engagement with practical matters to feel deflating at times, as though what should feel meaningful is being reduced to analysis. Mercury can intellectualize the second house's terrain without always honoring the emotional weight that material things carry for people. There is also a risk that the Mercury person communicates, again, consciously or not, messages about the house person's worth that are more limiting than affirming. The second house is sensitive to the stories it is told about value. A Mercury that is critical or dismissive in this house can do quiet damage to the house person's sense of their own enoughness. When this overlay functions well, it produces a relationship where practical matters are spoken about with unusual clarity and warmth. Two people who can talk honestly about money, values, and what they are building together, without avoidance, without shame, without drama. that quality of frank and productive conversation around the material world, is rarer than it sounds and worth a great deal. Mercury in the second house is ultimately about finding words for what you value, and in the speaking, discovering that those values are more solid and more worth protecting than you perhaps knew.
Thank you for listening. Next, we explore Mercury in the third house.